leaves are falling off the trees. You know, it is going to be what it is. And sorry for those technical difficulties, but we going to get this thing right. As you know, it's Monday. Like I said, got some liquid sunshine going on today. But nonetheless, your crew is here. And we going to do what we do. We going to make it do what it do. Like you just heard the song in the background, Men at Work. And
G-Rap.
we consider this work. And also, we into classic hip hop. So, as a classic, Cool G Rap and DJ Polo, Men at Work. So, we're going to do what we do. And welcome once again, as always, to another installment of the Sports Rap Podcast right here on Heat 100 Radio, the station that keeps it 100. So we appreciate, again, everybody that tunes in, everybody that follows us on social media, that just supports us. You know, if we don't have you, we don't have us. You know, I know we had our 5th anniversary show last week, and my partner mentioned that if the show doesn't go, if I don't go, the show doesn't go. Totally appreciate that. But also, we need you to make it happen. If it wasn't for you guys, we would just be doing this just to be doing it. But, you know, we are, just so you know, we do pay attention. We are following. We do know what's going on our social medias. And we do see the love and support that we get from our station mates, our other shows here, the boss lady, and everybody else in and around on our social medias. So we definitely appreciate you all for that. We got some interesting stuff that I wanted to bring to the table today. You know, as always, I get my partner in tune at worst on Sunday afternoon to give him a heads up about what's going to go on Monday. And one of the things I want to talk about is we are going to get to it once we get through our news and updates and our football scores from week 7. There has been a signing of Antonio Brown. And when I first posted it, and I'm sure you saw it, I posted the picture, everybody, I'm sure y'all saw it. Rock Hall, thanks for tuning in. What's going on? Rock the Bar was tuned in from the Morning Rush. And I want to talk about that as far as what I mentioned in the post. Was it a good signing, or will it come back and bite the Bucks in the you-know-where? And then this morning, I want to add a piece to it. And it's backtracking or going back to some things that we talked about when it first happened and that we continually talked about for weeks and months on. And that's in reference to one Colin Kaepernick.
Right.
In the situation. So, just give you a heads up on that. When we get to it, you know, we'll let you know, you'll know, and we'll let you chime in. Like you said, Facebook Live, Sports Rap Radio, Sports Rap Podcast is now the group. So, like you just saw, Rock Hall just tuned in. You can tune in and you can type. He typed in, "What's up, bro?" So you can put in your comments, and we will definitely get as many of them, if not all of them, read on the air. So let's get into our news and updates for this week. The Philadelphia Eagles, in their attempts to trade Alshon Jeffrey, was very difficult. A big part of that is due to his paycheck and the injury bug. So I can understand how that's very difficult, because teams right now may not have the room, or they may have other plans and might not want to take on that big salary. And also the injury bug.
Yeah.
Going back to last season, if you will, but more importantly this season, we are approaching week 8. Quick. And we have not seen, Eagles fans have not seen Alshon Jeffrey in uniform as of yet, as far as game time. They say he's been practicing a little bit, but practice is practice. You know, the state of the Eagles, the state of that division, and we're going to talk a little bit about that division as well. The state of the Eagles right now, who sadly sit in first place at 2-4-1, and nobody in this division is above 500. Everybody in this division is under 500. So we got some stuff to talk about this division. But Alshon, you are sorely needed on the field, and you know it's just a thorn in the side. But like I said, the big paycheck and the injuries. So again, I know I'm jumping the gun a little bit, but just like we said, the Sixers had a lot of work to do in the offseason. I think the most work that's going to need to be done from the Philly teams is the Eagles. And I think that's going to possibly or eventually start with them seriously considering and seriously thinking about moving on from Howie Roseman. And it just shows in the last several drafts how the Eagles have missed out on players that were there for the taking when they drafted. So we'll get into that a little bit. Excuse me. Excuse me. Like I mentioned, Antonio Brown has signed with the Bucks. The deal is reportedly worth up to $2.5 million. Okay. Now this is the way they broke it down. So it's potentially up to $2.5 million. There's a $750,000 bonus for a Super Bowl win, and then there's three $250,000 bonuses for catches, yards, and TDs. Okay. Now we'll talk about that when we get to talking about the Antonio Brown and him signing with them. The NBA is now targeting Christmas Day for the start of the season, which brings to my head the fact that if they start on Christmas, in essence, they are about a month behind their normal start. They usually start around October, the end of October, Halloween or the week before that. Actually, we would be looking at possibly, if there were a regular season, no coronavirus, we would probably be looking at some preseason games this coming weekend since we're going into the end of the month. So, but again, I give the NBA kudos and I give them some wiggle room because they are desperately trying. And, with everything that's going on, they're working around it, but they have contingency plans set, like we always say. And they're so far, the best that has done it, handled that coronavirus and interrupting their seasons. The Toronto Raptors may play in Louisville, Kentucky at the KFC Yum Center. Wow, that's almost as bad as Detroit, the Little Caesars Arena.
Yeah.
But I think that's very interesting that the Raptors would play in the States. Could that be a hint on a move? Because they're the only team. Remember when they first started, there were two teams in Canada. The Vancouver Grizzlies, who are now the Memphis Grizzlies, and now there's the Toronto Raptors, who possibly could be playing. Right now, they may play in Louisville. Could that mean a possible move, some more sponsorship from KFC in that KFC Yum Center? One of the biggest things that has been a buzz or rumored in the NBA around the league is the fact that there are players who do not want to go there because of that high tax bracket. Mighty Mouse, thanks for tuning in as always. So that's a huge, huge thing in Toronto because that tax bracket is
it's
as
rough.
high as giraffe.
It's rough. You pay two separate taxes.
Yeah, you get two separate taxes because you get the regular state tax because you're affiliate of the NBA, and then you get that Canada tax, which is, like I said, high as giraffe, So we'll see what happens with that. Deshaun Jackson, after his ankle injury on Thursday night, will miss some extended time, and then it was later reported that he will be out indefinitely. And to save in the event that the Eagles hold on and win the division and somehow make the playoffs, he was placed on IR, so he would have a chance to come back. So there's another possibility with the Eagles. Like we said, their difficulty in trying to trade Alshon. They're going to have to think very, very hard about what they're going to do with Deshaun Jackson. In the beginning, it was a great signing with him coming back and all of that. And, it was a fan favorite, a fan specialty to bring him back, which I think, when it all boils down to it, I go back to when he was released by Chip Kelly and that whole debacle of a couple seasons of the Philadelphia Eagles. I felt like he never should have been released.
Nah.
And I think they would have gotten more production out of him, and it would have flowed, and possibly could have saved him some injuries like he's been going through over his last couple years of his career. In the World Series, the Dodgers take Game 5 4-2 over the Rays. That series is now edged towards the Dodgers at 3-2 after Game 5. Tuesday, tomorrow night, 8 p.m. on Fox will be Game 6. A potential closeout game for the Dodgers. Or an extension game for the Rays, and we will definitely see what happens. That will be posted, as we do when we're not on air on social media. The Tennessee Titans were fined $350,000 for their violations. I'm gonna talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
That three, as we like to say, that slap on the wrist. We'll get to that. In the UFC, Khabib gets an impressive win in the lightweight division and then retires. He got a lot of kudos from players around, other players, other athletes. Hey, Aunt Joe, thanks for tuning in. Got a lot of kudos for athletes around from other sports on how he handled himself with retiring after an impressive win with the 29-0 record. It's also been reported that he promised his mom that particular fight would be his last fight. And he stuck to his word and he retired, immediately or shortly thereafter that fight. So kudos to him for that, for keeping a promise to his mom and ending his career on top, as you should go out 29-0 as the champ. And folks, if you haven't seen any UFC, 29 fights, in my opinion, is a lot of fights for the physical activity, the extensive, rough physical activity that goes on in those UFC matches. Like, you see, they're just wearing slightly padded gloves over the knuckles, but it's a lot of grappling and boxing, wrestling. It's like three sports all tied into one.
Right.
So you can kick, and not just kick in the legs, you can kick people in the head, you can punch them in the head, elbow. Everything that you can't do in boxing, you can do in UFC. Everything that you can't do in grappling, you can do and then some in UFC. Things that you can't do in wrestling, you can do in UFC. So 29 fights is a long time to endure punishment at that level. And for him to be 29-0 and taking on somebody, because it wasn't all sweet.
Right.
We know that. Because like I just mentioned to you, the rules and regulations of the UFC, still, we know it's rough. So it definitely was not easy, but shout out to him for lasting and having no major injuries, or no serious injuries, and being able to get to 21 wins and no losses. So the last thing I want to give you in your news and updates before we get into some NFL talk and some NFL scores from week 7 was not put in the mainstream, but you know me, I'm always searching for stuff to bring to the show, doing my homework. And this is just some accolades, some praise for these young ladies. There was a African American girls chess team out of Detroit who went to a national championship and won first place. So kudos to them for that. And like I said, it was not mentioned in the mainstream. So we are going to do our due diligence and mention it here and give them kudos for that. So folks, young ladies, young men, that there's an example for you where you don't have to be a physical athlete to succeed or be successful. You can use your mental.
Oh, most definitely.
And I think a lot more of our youth need to look at that avenue. And I'm not saying don't play sports or whatever. Do whatever's comfortable for you. But you also have to take into consideration and remember that at some point, you're not going to be able to do the physical stuff. But you keep your mind sharp, that can extend some careers for you. And you see, you can play chess. Chess, if you don't know, if you don't play, is a mind game. You hear it all the time. It is referenced in sports all the time. Coaches are playing a chess game. They're not playing checkers, yada, yada, yada. But it's a mind game. And it is very strategic, and it can help build attributes for other things. If you want to go into business, you can be strategic, and the other things it will help you in. So again, think about some of the mental stuff that you can do as far along with the athletic stuff. So now we move into week 7 NFL scores. And as I was recording these scores yesterday, I noticed that I copped the schedule, and we went through the schedule and gave our picks. But two games that we had were different because of all the changes. There was the Chargers Miami game that was actually on the schedule initially, and the Pittsburgh Baltimore game, which ended up being the Pittsburgh Tennessee game and the Chargers Jacksonville game. So we'll give you those scores accordingly. Going back to Thursday, and if you will, a barn burner, Philadelphia Eagles and the New York Giants, 22-21. We'll talk a little bit about that and how the Eagles came back in that game and what happened with the Giants, how they shot themselves in the foot and couldn't hold on. So then we move on to yesterday's games. Yesterday, Detroit with a great comeback, defeat Atlanta 23-22. Cleveland edges out Cincinnati 37-34. There was also an injury to Odell Beckham. I haven't seen any reports that it was a major injury, but I will keep my ears to the street and report later on what I find out about that injury. The next game up would have been on the initial schedule. It was the Chargers at the Miami Dolphins. So that was switched because of the coronavirus and the rescheduling, and there was the Los Angeles Chargers versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Chargers take that game 39-29. We move on to Carolina, New Orleans. New Orleans edges out Carolina 27-24. Buffalo gets by the Jets 18-10. Dallas gets beat up literally by the Washington football team. That final score was 25-3. Pittsburgh should have been playing Baltimore, but due to the differences, they ended up playing Tennessee, and they win that by a field goal, 27-24. Green Bay beats Houston 35-30. Seattle falls to Arizona in overtime, 34-37. Kansas City, not pretty, but still somehow managed to put up 43 points and beat Denver 43-16. We'll talk a little bit about Kansas City too. It's so scary, and like I just mentioned, wasn't pretty, but somehow, some way, they still managed to put up 43 points. So we'll have to talk about that and see what goes on with that. The San Francisco 49ers go to New England, and they beat up on Cam and the Patriots 33-6. Yeah. Cam was benched in that game. But one of the things I liked about after the game, Cam was benched. He didn't actually, say too much about him being benched, but he did own up to his downfalls. He said that, and I quote, abridged version, that he felt like, a lot of that was on his shoulders. He needed to be better, and he wasn't the quarterback that he should have been, that he needed to be. So I respect him taking ownership of his actions in that loss.
There's two sides of that too. The side that he did just speak of, we always say that an athlete, if they're put in the right situation, can evolve into something special. He was a special player before he got there.
Right.
I don't think they've ever had a quarterback as physically gifted as him.
No, they haven't.
And so you gotta start making the game for the player.
Yep.
As good as Cam could be in the pocket because he can stand tall in the pocket, which is perfect. Bull got an arm.
Yeah.
They also had to get him moving.
Yep.
And I think
it works out both better for both parties in that situation.
Yeah. And I think because the Patriots for years had never ever had to worry about rolling the quarterback out.
Absolutely.
That's something that they got to get, because when I watched that game, I'm like, oh, well, anytime he got out the pocket was because the pocket collapsed on him, not because it was designed that way. Right. So I think that, when you go back and look at the game and look at the plays that were called, they weren't using his abilities
to his advantage
enough.
Okay.
You know what I mean? The team itself didn't put enough plays in there to his ability, and rightly so. He got to take the hits for the loss, the missteps, the mistiming, right, and all that stuff. And I'm cool with that. But also that team has to take
Oh yeah.
you know, some responsibility on. Okay,
Yeah.
what are we doing to highlight
Right.
this guy's physical
that
capability?
alleged great mind of Bill Belichick.
What are we going? What you gonna do?
Put it to use. Khalid Eliezer, Senior, thanks for tuning in.
Yeah,
Hey,
and I'm hoping this doesn't be this thing. See, I told you about these black quarterbacks, man.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
it. You know that's coming.
But you know how I feel about the Patriots and their whole alleged dynasty and greatness situation. You know I have my asterisks all over that, and my highlights or whatever you want to do all over that. So that's like a whole different story that we could get into at another time.
Yeah.
Tampa Bay closing out the week defeats Las Vegas 45-20. So those are your scores. Tonight you got Miami at Chicago. No, you got Chicago at the LA Rams on Monday Night Football. So we will definitely get into that on social media as I post week 8, and we'll give you our week 8 picks. We're gonna talk some football before we close out this football segment. We'll give you our week 8 picks. So backtracking, and said we would talk about a couple things. Let's talk about this Kansas City Denver game for a minute. Again, like I mentioned, Kansas City still ended up scoring 43 points.
Mm-hmm.
Their defense held Denver to 16 points. And I mean, we all know Denver is not the Denver of the Elway era.
Right.
We know that right now. But it's no excuse. You know, football is football. You still got to play the games. But the scariest thing in that whole situation is the fact that the Kansas City Chiefs, the reigning Frank, what's going on? Thanks for tuning in. Yo, what is going on?
Yeah,
with
my
feed
listen.
and this today.
My connection is
Yeah, the connections are
freezing.
bad. So if the
Yeah.
videos keep stopping and starting, folks, just
Yeah.
bear with us.
I thought it was just me over here.
Yeah, bear with us. We will definitely try to get that worked out
Right.
and get you in, you know, as much as we can. But we do know that you are tuned in.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll try our best to keep you abreast on what's going on. If it goes out and we feel like you missed anything,
Mm-hmm.
when we come back in, we will backtrack and give you what we feel that you might have missed. But again, this Kansas City team, we knew the explosiveness of the offense for the last couple seasons.
Mm-hmm.
It was really on display last season on that championship run. But yesterday's game was not for lack of a better word, typical Kansas City game, if you will, considering the state of the Broncos and them playing the Broncos. It is not what you would have expected from a Kansas City team. But again, the scariest part of that, like I mentioned, is they still managed to score 43 points.
Yeah,
So,
we all do fantasy football and all that stuff.
Mhm.
And when I looked at the score, normally it's, when I see a score like that, I know Pat Mahomes supposed to be lighting up on my phone. It really wasn't.
Right.
And I'm like, well, hold up. Let me go check in on this. Let me click on this game. I start looking at the stats, and I'm like, well, how are they scoring? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It was like kind of crazy because the offense hasn't been clicking as much.
Right. Mm-hmm.
That 1-2 hit between him and Kelsey has been a little off.
Right.
You know what I mean? I don't know why, but it's just been off a little bit.
But you know what also is somewhat amazing to me is, for the first time in a long time, I don't think anybody's ever really talked about this since this season started. And in history, it's a little odd as well, as far as the NFL. We always talk about that Super Bowl hangover.
Yeah.
And, we saw it with the Eagles. We saw it, unfortunately, because of COVID and everything with the injury bug. We just saw it with the 49ers. We saw it with the Rams, who went and couldn't win, and then they had having little setbacks. But it doesn't look like it's really affecting the Kansas City Chiefs as it has affected other teams.
Right. It doesn't seem like they're it's kind of more so like a gelling situation. I think because of the way the season started this year,
Right.
I think that had a lot to do with why the offense is the way it is. Because you got to remember too, it was no preseason, no really, you know what I'm saying.
Right.
So I think
Training camp was there.
yeah, I think that was just like a connection thing. Like, okay, we just got to figure it out. But in due time, let's just do what we got to do. You
Right.
know what I mean? I mean that when the Raiders played the Chiefs, that was the best I had seen their offense, even though they lost.
Right.
I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, all right.
Yeah, they're like they used to. You
Yeah,
like
they
they still
okay.
here.
They figuring it out.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean? And then you turn around, and then it's like, all right,
Yeah.
you know. So it's just kind of weird, man. Like this season
Yeah.
has
And,
been
you know,
weird. And
fortunately for them, they haven't been hit like everyone else has been hit with the injury bug. You know, like it's amazing. The Eagles won the Super Bowl a few years back. That following year was the start of this continued injury bug for them every year. Just happened to the 49ers.
Yep.
And it happened in a matter of 2 weeks into the season. You know, so it's pretty rough as to how this thing is playing out, and you know it's real rough. But again, it just shows you how scary that particular team is, and I say scary, I literally mean scary because, like we just mentioned, on a bad day, they have had a good showing.
Right.
For, you know, if you want to call it that, it was still a good showing because they got the win and because of the amount of points that they put up.
Well, think about it. I'm, you know, and I just start looking at their stats again because I knew it was lopsided. I just didn't know how lopsided it was. Total yards. Denver had 411.
Wow.
They had 286. Total yards.
So yeah, now if you look at stats, you would think Denver won that game.
Passing yards. Denver had 234. KC had 185.
Which is abnormal for them.
Rushing yards. Denver had 177. KC had 101. The yards per play was almost even. Denver had 24 first downs. They had 17. But this is the one that stood out to me. On third down efficiency, KC was 0 for 8.
Wow.
They was 0 for 8, where Denver was 5 for 14. The total plays, Denver had 76 total plays, Kansas City 51.
Wow.
So you had 25 more total plays. So they had the ball more. Had 33 minutes to 26 minutes. Here's where it kills them. 2 fumbles lost, 2 interceptions.
Wow.
That's what killed them. There wasn't a lot of penalties in the game. But when you start looking at the yardage and to see what the score ended up being, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, that's what gets you.
It's like,
yeah,
what?
You're looking, you're like, wait, this is Kansas City? Yeah.
40,
and like I said, but also in the back of your mind, you're thinking, I feel for their next opponent.
Yeah.
You know, once they get their hands on those stats, you know, it's going to definitely be a want to improve on that.
Oh,
and
most
especially,
definitely.
like you said, not so much the disparity, but the imbalance of it. You know, they could easily go into the film room and say, yo, we should have lost this game.
Yeah.
But somehow, some way, we scored 43 points and they only scored 16. You know, if you are analytical, if you are definitely a stat man, and you just look at stats before you look at scores or take the scores away from things like that, you would definitely believe that Denver won that game.
Yeah, you would.
You know,
you would.
And for all intents and purposes, football minds would go in and statistically and say, Denver should have won this game.
They should have. Statistically, like you said.
And to give up 43 points, you know, it says a lot about the state of the NFL this particular season and how it has affected teams in a lot of different ways. Okay, so that being said, we'll move into our definitely